Well guys, day whatever in the shop. Another quick little video. I've been uploading a bunch of videos, some stuff from the car that I didn't edit yesterday and things like that. But anyway, continuing with Foundry projects since we're stuck here. So I'm going to do a little machining later on my Atlas centers, but right now I'm getting a couple little Foundry projects going again. A lot of interest in match plate vibrators, you know, like this one that I build in-house. Seems to be quite a few people that aren't real familiar with them and think they want to build them and that type of thing. So this is off of patterns that I've been building before, and when I developed the last plate, well, I said I was going to cut them back into the match plate itself so they set farther in. And I went through basically all of the match plates that I currently use, and I think I modified 8 or 9 of them so that they sat farther into the plate, into this corner down in here. So and I have, this is my last plate that's already pre-cut in this size, for that size flask. And this is a flask that I was complaining about the other day because I had blowouts trying to use it as a snap flask on the newer flask hardware. So I'm going to go ahead, since I've got this one made up, it's the last one, I'm going to go ahead and I'll continue to utilize that flask, and I may make some duplicates of that in a non-snap flask, in a standard solid flask configuration. But we're about to start building some flasks, so we'll do some videos on that and I'll show you what I think about that. I had my patterns for my match plate vibrators set up on a match plate, and this is a real early one, and this is one of the ugliest ones that I've got. Thin material, real thin material. This is only 3/8 or 1/2 inch plywood, and the way my patterns were mounted was on the top side we had this part of the vibrator. On the back side of it, this piece formed our core, and it sat in here, so it was aligned with the top piece. And then I had the lid, or the cap, was affixed right here on the bottom of the plate. So since this is one that I've used on a fairly regular basis to cast more of these, why I thought we'll upgrade it, and this is what I'm going to put on this last match plate that I've got. So I've already played with it a little bit, and I had the layout. I put a layout line right down the middle, and I was going to orient it exactly the same way. With on the top, I was going to mount it here like this, and then the other two pieces were going to mount on the bottom, just like they were on the other plate. Now I've kind of changed the way I've decided to do that. And let me move the camera down and I'll kind of give you an overview. I'm not going to go through the whole process, but I'll tell you how I'm going to lay it out and why I'm going to lay it out that way and why I think it'll work. And with all of this stuff, modifications may have to be made. We'll see. But I think I've got a pretty good idea of how I want to do it. Okay, hopefully that gives you a pretty good view. We're not too shaky and all that good stuff. So the original idea was to mount it like this, other two parts on the bottom side. And then it was fed. I had a runner off of this side originally that fed down and into this, which was on the bottom side of the match plate. And of course this held our core print with all of our stuff down on the bottom side. We set it into our mold. So, and I'll show you the core box for that here in a few minutes. I've got the core box sitting right here too in an insert. So instead of doing it this way, and I don't remember how I fed this. If I manually cut my gates into this, probably just into the side here, or I don't know, I may have fed directly into it, maybe here, I don't remember. Anyway, because it's been a while since I've cast these. Anyway, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount both this part and this one on top. I think we're going to use an orientation very similar to this. We're going to feed a sprue in on this side here, and we'll put our sprue, we'll put our runners on the bottom side of the plate, and we're going to run them on the bottom side from if our tapered sprue sits here. Why, we're going to run a gate over this way, and then one probably into this end. And I'm just going to run a very small kiss gate into both of those. This is a small enough pattern. I think Steve Chastains calls for these to be poured about 1300 degrees, and that's about right. That's also hot enough that we should get pretty good flow. I'm not going to worry about putting a riser here at all. I don't think to start I'm going to mount a riser on this. If I do go back and put a riser in, it will probably be in this area someplace here, and we'll run our riser off of here, fairly close some way. Possible we could put a riser right on top, and that would take care of any shrinkage we've got, that type of thing. I think even though this looks like a fairly substantial pattern and a fairly substantial amount of aluminum, the majority of it's hollowed out on the inside. So I think we can go ahead and feed it in there. Our steel liner acts as a chill, so I think if we pour it fairly hot, we can run it through there and get a good fill without adding a riser here. I will vent this when we pull the pattern. You know, I think it needs a little bit of venting here in the top of this cap, which is actually the bottom, but in this configuration we're looking at it from the bottom at the down on the top. So it'll feed down and then fill from the bottom up. That should give us a pretty good casting. So that's my plan. I'm going to go ahead, set that up, lay it out, and after we get it all mounted, why we'll take a look at it and see what it looks like and if it's going to work or not. Now our core, this is our core print on the bottom, so it'll sit down there. This is our core box for this whole setup, and it's pretty straightforward. There again, our core goes back together like that. Now once we've got it, we run a steel liner inside here for that ball bearing to run on as a race, and this is one of the steel inserts. It's pretty much ready to go. I may scuff it a little bit more on the outside, but it sets down into our core box just like that, and we clamp it up, ram it with sand, and we'll go ahead and ram it with core sand. And in this case I'm going to use a molasses water sand wheat flour mixture. I've used that core before. It's the same core material that I used on the Atlas Index Centers when I did them, and for this it works fine. You know, there's nothing rocket science about it. And of course we've got our taper on there. Once we get that out and bake it, why then it comes out of the mold and it gets set in just like this. Cast with our liner, with our steel liner inside, and our core print up inside. So it works quite well. I don't anticipate making any changes to that box at all, but that's the core box. I got this installed on the match plate and got some filler on it, and now I just got a little bit of lacquer filler on it. I thought you'd like to see what it looked like before we seal it. And we can probably do it right here. So here's our pattern mounted up. We went back and too clumsy here. Okay, we've gone back, we've mounted it on here, we glued it on, and actually I put some screws in this. Just because it's, you know, a few pieces hanging out there. Want it to stay permanent. This mold's going to last hopefully indefinitely now, or this pattern. So we're going to mount our sprue right here, and what I've done is laid out on the other side where our runners are going to go, and we're feeding down through the sprue here. This one will feed over and kiss into the bottom of the top plate, and this will come over here and kiss into this front edge for a feeder on the main body. So I think we're about ready to go. We'll let this filler dry a little bit and lightly sand it off, and then we'll go back and put whatever I've got on it to seal over the top of it, just to keep the moisture out of it until we get a good coat of shellac on everything. Everything looks pretty good. I've gone ahead, and I did it before I mounted it. I've added the holes where our air vents are going to go here. I've just marked them, and I marked our center, so there's no more layout on that when I pull it out of the mold and go to finish it out. All I got to do is set up and drill press and drill those air holes, and then drill through the center for our bolt to mount the top on. Same way with the bottom. I'd previously filled in a hex on this because the early ones I just had a round hole in there, and it's hard to get a wrench in there to hold it. So this pretty well, as long as it casts halfway decent. Why, it's got our hex in there already, so our bolt will line up. I've just got to have one wrench to assemble it on the back side. And this, of course, is our core print in the bottom. So yeah, this is almost done. Weather's kind of nasty this afternoon. Looks like it's going to rain, so I'm not going to try and cast. And it's a little cold, but maybe tomorrow we can get this cast up. I'll have it all sealed up and finished by then. Previous project, and I'll get into this a little bit deeper, is when I cast the flask hardware. This is one that's in the configuration. It's ready to mount on the flask and then machine whether it be the pins, the holes for the pins, or the holes for the slots going through it. Why, I've gone ahead, just cleaned it up a little bit, and countersunk them. So that's the way it's going to look. Okay, going to try and do a little casting today. Got my plate vibrator, remounted again to where it's going to be functional. There again, everything will get a coat of clear finish over it when we're done. Here's our front, or the front of our match plate. This is our vibrator body. This is the top for it. And then on the back we've got our core print. We're going to feed down and through the bottoms, and we're going to kiss gate into this end here and right over to here. And we're going to mount our sprue right here. I'll probably vent this with a couple of little vents. I'm not going to put a riser on it, so we're going to cast it up and see how it goes. And we're about ready to go out to the molding bench. But before I go out there, we're going to ram up a core real quick and start it baking. This is our core box. I gave you a quick view of it yesterday. It mounts just like that. Let's wipe it out a little bit. We haven't. This is a little bit rough. We may want to go back and sand that, but we'll go ahead and we'll probably go back and put a couple of coats of finish back on that. We haven't used this in quite a while. Anyway, there's our two halves going together, and here's our steel insert. We roughed up the outside. You can rough it up a little more than that, but I don't know how necessary it really is. So there's our steel liner in there. We'll ram that up in the core. It looks like that might be a little bit better mixture. Looks like it might hold together the way it's supposed to. Yeah, not too bad there. If we're going to get this part to come apart. There we go. Nope. Okay, we can call that a good core. I think we can call that a good core. That's going to be relatively good. We're going to go ahead and set it in the oven at 350 degrees for probably about 40, 45 minutes, something like that. About the time we get the patterns rammed up, why, this will be done. Alright, I've already checked my pins. I've got the match plate on here. We're looking at the bottom side. I'm just going to go ahead and quickly ram it up. You guys have seen this before, but I thought we'd like to see what kind of a pull we get out of this. You saw the extent that I took on finishing out the patterns. It's not perfect, but it's probably plenty good for what we're doing here. So let's ram it up and see what we come up with. Core's in bacon. It'll be ready in about another half an hour. So assuming this one rams and pulls right, I've got one more mold I want to go ahead and ram up this afternoon. We're kind of calling for rain, and it rained yesterday afternoon. I'm hoping that I can beat the rain today. I just prepped this sand a couple of days ago and had not anticipated casting again until either the end of the week or next weekend. So the sand is actually just a little bit wetter than I would like to see it. But I think we might be able to get something decent out of it. Kind of rub that in as a bottom board. There we are. I think one of our not too far distant projects will be a smaller one of these. I've been using my little wood one in and around the corners on these smaller patterns, but I think we'll make one very similar to that, except smaller on the ends, a little bit smaller all the way around, except through the grip probably. One of the things that I've contemplated doing on my next set of molding flasks, and I thought about it off and on for years basically, is I thought about taking and making my wooden flasks and then putting some 1/8 by 3/4 or 1/8 by 1 inch strip around the top. That would alleviate beating the crap out of it with your rammer and give you a little more durable surface there. But I haven't decided if that's really a good idea or not. I may try it on a couple at some point, and if it works well, then do it on all of them, but I just don't know if that's a good idea or not. See, this is back to my main complaint with this flask hardware, is all this crap built up right in through here. for a pull. Looks like a really good one on both halves. Okay, I got no complaint with that whatsoever. Okay, and the other half looks just like this. So we'll clean out the sprue a little bit. I'm not going to worry about it. That's got good detail on it. I'm not going to do anything else to that other than, like I say, clean that sprue. As long as I've got my feeders in the right place, why, that looks like it should do fine. I am going to vent very lightly. I think probably 2 places here. And I think that'll be plenty. We're not going to do any more to that than that right there. So I'll wait to put this back together. Actually, I won't. I'll go ahead and put it together. And we'll have to remember and take it apart to put our core in there. Yep, that'll be fine. Okay, there's our lid. And here's the rest of our body. And you can see how it looks discolored and everything. That's the core sand. There's our core. Hard as can be. We'll just pitch that. That won't go back into our sand melt. But we'll just sand off that flashing, clean it up a little bit more. And that looks really good. Here's where we gated it, or where we ran a couple of vents. I don't know that it's really necessary on this. And now we're off our sprue. Got a little bit of a shrinkage there. There again, match plate vibrator. Do we really care? So all in all, that looks pretty good. Like I say, we'll clean that off, hit it on the belt sander, and see, we've got pretty good definition there. We've got our hex bolt. We've got our hole right in the center, so all we've got to do is drill that. I believe that's a 5/16. And we'll drill that through. We'll clean that up in there. We got just a little bit that got in past our core there. That'll clean up real easily with the Dremel. So we got to drill one hole there to mount it. We got to drill the hole through there. We have to drill the hole through there. And if we look, we've got our 4 little spots where our number 38 drill bit goes through to vent on there. And our center pip, of course, we drill right through there and bolt her together. Oh, we also have to drill and tap for our hole in there, and we drill our air vent straight in into the liner, and that's a fairly critical dimension. So other than that, that's all there is to a homemade match plate vibrator. They work really good. Before I finish sanding this up off camera, there's our little kiss gate right on there, right on the back. That's just about right. I think we'll leave that just the way it is. And this would have been our gate going in here. What I think I will do is shorten that gate up just a little bit, and on the next one I will vent it here. So maybe just one vent here and one right through the mounting bracket there is probably all we need. Here's about 5 minutes of the belt sander, and that's all I did from the last time you saw it when I popped it out of the mold and tore the pieces off. I just ran it over the belt sander, smoothed the top off. Nothing spectacular there. Got our 4 places we're going to drill with a number 38 drill bit, and I ran around the edge lightly there just to kind of clean it up a little bit. Might do a little bit more. Same way with this. Ran it across the top just to take those vents off. A couple little nubbins I had from vents. Ran it flat onto the belt sander. You can see we've got a little bit of flash inside there that we're going to have to clean off, and a little bit rough. And then just flattened it on the belt sander. Ran the edge on the belt sander. I haven't done any file work at all. You see we've got our hex. I believe it's a 5/16 bolt that goes through there. So all I'm going to do is set it in the vise, take my little chisel and knock those little nubbins off, and then we're going to go ahead. We'll drill this hole. We'll drill this hole in our 4 little vents, and then we'll have to set it up in the mill, or a drill press would work fine. And it's kind of critical where it intersects going into the inner wall. So we'll drill that all the way through, and then we'll tap it. I'll probably do that stuff off camera, but then we'll come back and reassemble it and show you what we've got. So we can knock our little nubbins off in the vise. I won't even move the camera here. You won't have a great view of it, but you can see how quick and easy that's going to go. how quick and easy that comes out of there. I know that looks rough, but all we have to do is have our little ball bearing right around inside there with our lid on. So we'll go and drill it. Oh, we got to drill a hole there too for our mounting bolt. But anyway, that's all there is to it. I'm going to go do the machining on it real quick. It's taken me about 15 or 20 minutes to get to this point. We've flattened this up. We've drilled our 5/16 hole in the middle, and then our little exhaust port holes in the top of that. We've drilled our 5/16 hole through there, and we drilled a mounting hole. Real precision there, you know, and we had our index on here. Now this may need to be cleaned up a little bit, but that's a minor thing. There's our inside look. We've drilled and tapped in the end, and our small hole comes in through there to run it. Goes together real simple. Our 5/16 bolt will go in there, and it doesn't seat all the way in. I'll probably have to go back and clean that hole up a little bit, which I'll probably have to do on the pattern too for subsequent ones. All we wanted to do is set down in there. For that matter, why don't we quickly do that right now? That way it's a done deal. I'm not even going to change bit out. We've got probably a fairly dull burr in here. That's probably enough right there. Maybe not quite. But maybe it is. But that'll be just fine. Our ball bearing goes inside. Our top cap goes on, which that's a little bit big. We could sand the outer contour a little bit, but it's basically cosmetic. And then I use a nylock on top. And assuming we've done everything the way we're supposed to, we can go back and tighten it up. Okay, we're tight on top. We take an air hose. It'll be mounted on our match plate, of course. We would have a fitting on here. And we've got another match plate vibrator ready to go. So that's just how quick and easy. You know, once I got the pattern made, it was a casting session. It took me 10 minutes to ram up a mold, 10 or 15, you know, and then poured it when we did the pour. So we do have our casting time and however long it takes us for that. Machining time on the rest of it, probably, another 20 minutes, half hour, and it's done. And that's a good match plate vibrator. So every time I've doing a session that I've got a spare flask and a little extra time to do something, why, you throw in one of these, you throw in some flask hardware, whatever the case may be. So anyway, hopefully you found that a little bit informative, interesting, and any comments or suggestions, leave them in the comment section. Leave them in the comment section for me below. And as always, thanks for taking the time to watch.